Welcome back to Kind Regards the show. I'd like you to imagine that you are watching King Kong for the first time with a buddy of yours. And you see this, they go to the exotic land, and then they find the big sort of like gorilla ape monster thing. And they put him in chains and then put him to work in America. And then he breaks free and blah, blah, blah. You know King Kong, right? And the movie finishes and you say to your buddy, like, oh, what a great allegory of slavery in America, or the plight of the African American man in America. How deep, how profound. And your buddy says, what? Huh? I thought it was about the entertainment business and the way they treat talent, and there are all these like Hollywood motifs all the way through. Surely it's about how we control people who can make money for us. That's what it's about. It's about the biz. And so you guys want to settle this debate, and you go on the internet, you look up what did the makers of King Kong want us to think, what is their interpretation of their own work, and you find out that it's neither of these things, that the people who wrote King Kong wanted to make a big monster movie because they like that. And it has nothing to do with either. In fact, they know both interpretations. They've heard of them, and they deny both and condemn both. What do we do here? What does this mean? Does it mean that your interpretation is wrong? Is that what it means? Does it mean that your interpretation is bad? Or can you go on studying the film as a plight of, studying the film as the plight of Americans, African Americans? Can you just continue to do that irrespective of what the artist has intended the work to be? Or instead, we can imagine that the filmmaker refuses all comment, which is what David Lynch famously did. David Lynch, when asked to elaborate on his movies or certain themes, or, does this mean that, is this representative of, this psychological concept, he would always, as far as I'm aware, refuse to comment. What do we do in these scenarios? And what does it mean for us as the audience? How does this affect our relationship with art? Essentially, there are three mainstream stances here. And I've got some notes, so excuse me reading out the notes. W.K. Wimsett and Monroe Beardsley argued in the middle of the 20th century, kind of famously, that the intention of the author means nothing, right? Their point was that, heaps of authors are dead and we have no record of their meaning, cave paintings and such. How do we know what they're supposed to mean? We can't interrogate the authors. And also some authors who are living, like J.D. Salinger or David Lynch, refuse to comment. And so the central question for them, instead of what does the artist say that it means, is instead, does it work? Does the art work? Does it hit the spot? Does it do something to you? Does it make you feel something? So here the artist's interpretation is still valid. It still, counts for something. It's not nothing. We don't refuse to listen to interviews with directors or, conceptual artists. We don't need to do that. It's valid. It's just the same amount of valid as everybody else's. What their interpretation gives us is just as reasonable to take in as what your buddy's interpretation gives you. If it's a good interpretation, it illuminates so many things and makes you see the film or the piece of art in a whole new light that is really, valuable to you, then great. But if the artist, for example, says, no, it's not about that at all, it's just about a gorilla knocking down buildings, you can say, well, I prefer this other interpretation. That helps me. I like that. The second sort of stance that Stephen Knapp, probably it's pronounced, and Walter Ben Michaels, they said that the intention of the author means everything. Their thought experiment, which I think is pretty goofy, says if you were walking on the beach and you saw poetry scrawled into the sand, that would be meaningful to you on the assumption that someone had written it. If by some chance, seagulls had done it accidentally, then all of a sudden it would lose all meaning. Now, this is tempting to me when it comes to AI art, which I'll talk about a little, artificial intelligence created works, which I'll talk a little bit about down the road in this video. But yeah, that's essentially the second camp, is that the author's intention means everything. That without meaning injected into the work and real, without a goal of the work is just a bunch of crud, I suppose. And then the third is that the intention of the author, the third sort of piece of this, is that the intention of the author is a piece of the puzzle. Noel Carroll sort of stood in this place and reminded us that a speaker's intention matters to the audience. And his sort of example was, if a person is holding a cigarette and asks for a match and you have a lighter, you'll get out the lighter and offer to light their cigarette, even though that's not what they asked, right? The work, the communication that they've expressed is not, do you have a lighter? That's not what they want. But you've assumed their intention is a part of this thing. You don't just say no. You assume that what they want to do is light the unlit cigarette, and so you would do that. And the same thing is true of art. That the message is one thing, and then the context surrounding the message is another thing. The way the message is delivered, and what you know about the artist, all of these things sort of big piece of the puzzle, and extra pieces means more clarity, that kind of thing. Now, the intention of the artist meaning everything or being the only valid interpretation of the work, essentially, I'm in David Lynch's camp here, that takes the fun out of everything. Essentially, it means that there is only one way to interpret the work. There's a right answer and a wrong answer, which means that we as an audience, what are we even doing, right? Like, why don't we just read the answer and skip the art altogether? Just get the message, or get the message and then watch the art and go, and then forget about it forever, or I think it leaves all the creativity to the artists themselves and none to the audience, which I think is a big shame. I think it's fun coming up with ideas with buddies after watching a film, or speaking with your partner at the art gallery and being like, this makes me feel this, what does it make you feel, and why, and I wonder if they were doing this for this reason. That's good, fun, creative stuff, and I wouldn't want it to be poo-pooed by some idea of an objective, singular system of interpretation, that the artist is like the, tyrannically imposing on the audience. And it also reflects a idea about knowledge and the singularity of knowledge, that I've discussed in Contradictions, Caught in a Contradiction video. So please check that out if you want more about like objective knowledge and how it's inherently sort of limited and like self-defeating. Like, it doesn't hold up to philosophical scrutiny. So by disregarding the intentions of the artist, we open ourselves up to interpreting meaning out of art that has no artist. I think that this is true. And so I want to talk about AI art, dreams, and the natural world as art. When it comes to AI art, a solid take that I heard was from Oliver Berkman, who said that a big piece of the value, or big piece of the value puzzle when it comes to his work, is that he writes articles, sort of self-helpy, philosophically, productivity articles. He thinks that a big part of the value of the being in the audience is that he, a human person who has finite time, a finite number of breaths in their lives, has sat down and taken the time to write this thing. The fact that there's a mortal human consciousness on the other side of the art piece gives it a lot of its value. It's connection. You're connecting to a person, a human person, who's making work for your benefit. And he thinks that this connection is key, and that when it comes to AI, you don't have that. So it can be, a great research tool, sure, and it could, maybe it can make a better work than, pick your favorite art piece. According to Berkman, he thinks, there's nothing that we know so far that means that it can't do that, or will never be able to do that. But even if it does that, that piece will be empty. It will be hollow in this specific kind of way, in that it will not have required the sacrifice of a human being in order to create it, and therefore there's no real connection with like another mortal soul on the other end. On the other hand, if art is like a jumping off point for our own creative sort of interpretations, is there anything wrong in and of itself of using these things kind of like as a jumping off point, as like a Rorschach test, where you know that no one made it, that maybe there was not even an intention behind it. It was a random sort of assortment of bits, melding together of all these intentionally created images in this less intentional way. But can we sit and look at that and let our mind go where it goes and analyze our own reactions to the work? Is there anything wrong with like looking at Rorschach tests? Those ink blots. That the old psychiatry uses them. They're in like old movies and probably they're in like Mad Men and stuff. They look at the thing and then you go, oh, it's my mum giving birth to me, and they go, whoa, this guy's a freak. Is there anything inherently wrong with those? Maybe not. Dreams are a kind of a weird one. I'm reading like a book about Jung right now, and according to Jung, dreams are intentionally created. They're intentionally created by the unconscious in order to communicate with the conscious mind. So this kind of under the sea level, the unconscious, the stuff that we're not aware of that makes up ourself, wants to sort of accommodate, like balance out and achieve homeostasis. So this sort of equilibrium where we feel more stable and in control and chilling. So it compensates for imbalances in our conscious thought and behaviors. Our weird sort of complexes. It sends us messages in our dreams in order to do that. So according to Jung, they're intentionally created, but dreams have also been said by other sort of schools of thought to be random associations and symbols, kind of with no purpose, or the replaying of events in order to consolidate memories. So for our memories to sort of settle into place, into long-term memory, our brain has to just like, shuffle some cards together and then like deal them out again, and they all kind of fall into place. Or it's been said that they're rehearsing feelings, in different like contexts. So it's like a kind of emotional processing, like a rehearsal thing. Or it could be problem solving by assessing commonalities and, like I said before, shuffling sort of thoughts into like a big soup. If all of these things are true, it doesn't really hurt the chance that we have, in a similar sort of sense as AI art, that we can analyze dreams anyway. That the dreams in and of themselves don't have to have meaning, as long as it is meaningful what we interpret from the dreams. Does that make sense? This might be like a weird point or like a controversial point that people are like, hey, if it's just random stuff, then like, what's the point? Why are we doing this? To which I would say, because it's fun and creativity can breed or sort of bring forth insight. No matter what the source. I don't know if that's crazy to think. Thirdly, we have nature. We have like the natural world, which obviously some people think has a creator, and other people think is like, some big Mother Nature type who is sending us messages from the ants and stuff. And there's a wild TED talk about this, that where a lady like I think she's a scientist of some sort, makes the case that like we're more in touch mentally and emotionally and spiritually with the world than we think we are, and we can. Anyways, I'll link it below, so check that out if you're into that kind of stuff. But again, like the Rorschach test, like the AI art, it's like putting a mirror up to our own minds. What comes up when we notice ants touching antennas and scurrying around? What comes up out of that when we see the cooperation of big complex systems, or When we see the relentlessness of the waves and the power of the waves, smashing against the shore, what comes up for us, how we feel and then how we interpret those feelings, surely is a useful and valid tool. All of this is to say that it's up to you. The question we must ask, I think, is what is worthy of our attention and why? If we assume dreams to be worthless and, rightfully forgotten as the morning sun rises, that is how it shall be. If we think that they're random and that they're not worth our attention, then surely there will be very little to be interpreted amongst the dreams. We will just throw them away. If we immerse ourselves in film and interpreting film or art or any kind of world like this, allow ourselves to be absorbed in them again and again, let our consciousness really be taken away on a journey that we have already deemed is going to be significant, then a great deal of meaning and insight surely will follow that. And if nature is the medium by which your unconscious communicates with your conscious mind, according to you, then surely a whole bunch of synchronicities and meaning will arise from that. Our attention and the quality of our attention decide how deep or shallow our relationship with the world will be. Without any effort to derive meaning from anything, whether it's intentional art, dreams, the natural world, numerology, tarot cards, symbolism, religious or mythological, we will get in what we put out, which is not much. As I've said in other videos, our life is nothing more than our attention. What enters into our conscious experience is not just stimulus, it is actually what we are. It's not a jumping off point. It is our lives. It is our self. Our conscious experience is our self, fundamentally. And so how do we spend our finite attention? Is it deep? Is it shallow? Does it take effort? Are you satisfied afterwards? And so again, the question surely is, what is worthy of your attention? This has been Cultural Guys. Thanks very much. Apologies that I'm in a goofy hotel room, but this is the way it's got to be today and surely tomorrow. But I'll soon be in Tasmania, which should be quite nice. There's a Substack link and a YouTube and Spotify link below, so check out those. Thanks for watching. I hope this was useful. Goodbye. Thank you.